All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining our onX Fish 101 for the month of March. We'll get rolling here in just a little bit, but we want to give everybody just a little bit of time to get logged in and get situated and all that good stuff. So a couple of reminders, your audio and video are turned off, so we can't see or hear you. So no worries if you have noise in the background or anything like that. If you do have questions you'd like to have answered, please use the Q&A box on most of your screens. It should be down near the bottom there. Got a couple members of our customer support team answering questions in there. So utilize that. If you do have questions that are specific, like to your account, with a password or anything like that, probably best to just send those to our regular customer support email. We just don't quite have the ability to answer those types of questions in this class. So our customer support email is help@onxmaps.com. So that's a great, if you have any of those specific account type questions, shoot us an email. You can expect a response from us tomorrow if you email tonight. This class is being recorded, so you can watch it later on. We'll have it uploaded to YouTube, and then we will email everybody, and we'll send you the link tomorrow to that YouTube video so you can watch it. If you have to drop off early, you can see what you missed, or if you want to send it to one of your friends or something like that, you'll get that email tomorrow. And then finally, we are doing a giveaway at the end of the class. We're giving away some of these hats like I'm wearing here. So stick around for the end of the class. We'll post the giveaway link in the chat box towards the end of that class there. We're giving away the 10 hats. And with that, I guess we'll get rolling here. So I guess quick introduction. My name's Jack Hedlund. I will be not really taking you through the spiel here. Joel on the other end is going to be running us through most of the ins and outs of the app here. But we're going to go through kind of a nuts and bolts of what you need to know to be able to use onX Fish. Maybe get out this weekend. I know Joel and I were just talking. Ice conditions are pretty variable, so some folks might be finding some open water already. Some folks might still be able to get on the ice. We're kind of in that goofy time of year right now. But maybe you're planning for open water already. So we'll go through how to use a lake finder, how to utilize all the different fisheries data we have in here, some of the different tools within the app, like offline maps and waypoints, and then some of your different options for base maps and different imagery options and things like that. And then we'll have time for the Q&A towards the end, as well as that giveaway. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and kick it over to I don't know, it feels weird to call you a co-host. I feel like you're the host and I'm along for the ride. But Joel, what's going on?
Hey, glad to be a part of this. Thanks so much, Jack. Yeah, I'm going to take everybody through onX Fish and kind of remind us why we're all here. I think the very first thing to understand when it comes to onX Fish, and this is really important, is that onX Fish helps you find new lakes and gives you the confidence to get there. Finding new lakes is an integral part of any fishing experience, and it's really important to becoming a better angler because if we just fish the same old water, we should expect the same old results. And if we never challenge ourselves to get out and find better areas with more fish in the species we want to catch, in the size and the abundance that we want to catch them, again, we shouldn't be surprised by the same results. So tonight is going to be a lot about showing you how to find new lakes. And then number two, giving you the confidence, providing you with all the tools, everything that's in the map for you to get there safely and to be able to enjoy your best day on the water. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hang tight just a little bit here. We're going to share to the web map. Jack, do you see my screen? Everything looking good? We see Minnesota and Wisconsin for everybody.
Looking good.
All right, excellent. So the first thing you see is Minnesota and Wisconsin highlighted and everything around it saying area not supported. Currently, onX Fish exists in a very usable format, both for Minnesota and Wisconsin, with more Midwest states to come. I'll just take care of a few housekeeping things right now, right off the bat, so listen very closely. This will answer a lot of those burning questions that you guys already asked initially getting into the masterclass. So we'll just address them one by one. Like I said, It is available for Minnesota and Wisconsin only currently. It is currently free for a limited time. And if you want to use it on Android, we have something that we're working on and in development. But until then, we've got the web version for you guys to play with. And I'll be using the web version on screen. Jack will be using the app. You can follow along in either format. If you're an iOS user, you can download it again for free on the App Store. And if you're going to be using it on the web version, it's going to be the same address for everybody. And I'm just going to go ahead and mock that up. www.onxmaps.com/fish. And that takes you to this main landing page. I'll focus a little bit on Minnesota because that's what I'm most familiar with. As soon as you click on free in Minnesota or try for free in Minnesota, up comes the map. So Android, like I said, is something that is upcoming, and we're going to be trying to provide the best experience possible for those Android users on web up to that point. We're going to be talking a little bit about contours. The questions are always coming in about contours. And what we can tell you is that Minnesota and Wisconsin data that we are using is publicly available 5 or 10-foot contours, depending on the lake. We have all of the contours that are publicly available and working in Wisconsin to provide even more. And as we expand to other states, that's what you can expect, at least for the time being. So if there's a question on contours and contour accuracy, that's where we're at current day. Again, we're going to be doing something that no other app does in helping you find lakes using fisheries information. And that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. So without further ado, if we focus in on Minnesota, the first thing I wanted to show everybody is if you look in the lower left-hand corner of your app, it'll say Lake Finder. Again, lower left-hand corner of the app. If you're using it on web, like I am, it's Lake Finder up here in the upper left portion of the screen. You'll be able to follow along. And if you click on Lake Finder, the first thing that you see is a Lake Finder card with a number of recommendations. These are just shots in the dark, but it gives you an idea of the power behind some of the fisheries data. More on that later. This points out abundant walleye lakes. You see a trophy designation badge. You can click See All to really tease out where lakes have abundant walleye. Or here's some ideas on abundant bluegill or crappie lakes, both with trophy designations as well as special regulation information, trophy walleye, and so on and so forth. If you're ever in an area and you zoom in and you want to get more information on this area and just are looking for ideas and suggestions, the Lake Finder card is a really great tool to give you a quick and dirty understanding of exactly the kinds of lakes that you may want to target in the nearby area. So, Jack mentioned, we've got deteriorating ice conditions in Minnesota. There is some ice to be found in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, but let's be honest, I think everybody's ready to break out the long rods. I think everybody's willing and ready to be able to maybe tussle with some walleyes on the rivers and eventually plan for the Minnesota-Wisconsin fishing open. So what I'm going to do tonight is provide you with a number of examples on how you can use onX Fish to find new lakes to help you target the best lakes for opener and maybe come up with a plan B. So let's go ahead and dig right into that. If we know that I'm going to close the Lake Finder. Again, that was upper left-hand corner. Just click on that card to give you some ideas there. And in the app, it's lower left-hand corner called Lake Finder. But if we're going to go ahead and try to understand what lakes we might want to open on, we think about shallow water walleyes. We think about opening weekend. We're typically pitching jigs into shallow water or thinking about ways to get at shallow water fish. And obviously, we're interested in learning which lakes may have abundant walleye populations and also lakes that may have trophy options. So the real power, the real power in onX Fish is the way that we display fisheries information. So first and foremost, all of these fisheries data come from the Minnesota DNR or the Wisconsin DNR. This is regulated data that comes from fisheries biologists. This is not user-generated data. This isn't guesswork. This isn't, I think my brother caught a bass in this pond over here. These are actually sampled fish and recorded scientific data. And the way that we organize it has never been done before. So that's what we're going to show you a little bit about. The filtering is what helps you sort through that data. So the biggest and best filter we have is located on the top of your app or in the top of the web map that I'm showing. I'm hovering over the all button. If I click on all, you'll see the filters that come up. And let's start simple. We'll just start at the top and we'll select walleye. As soon as I select walleye, immediately you see all those red dots pop up. In the search area provided, these are all the lakes that have had sampled walleyes in them throughout all of the sampling years the Minnesota DNR has provided us data for. So that's just the start. We're interested in lakes that hold walleye, but maybe if it's opener, it's a chance to swing for the fences. We're maybe going to try and start out at midnight and we're going to try to get a trophy fish right off the bat. Or maybe we're interested in waiting till sunrise and pitching jigs and shallow cabbage. We're using those expensive shiners up, but we're really trying to get a big bite at the beginning of the year. All of these locations have had trophy walleyes sampled in them in the actual fisheries data. We're going to plow into that in a little bit. Let's say instead of trophies, we're interested in keeping a few fish for a fish fry. You'll see some of the major walleye factories show up, the Lake Winnie, Cass Lake, Leech Lake areas. All of those come up as lakes that are keeper potential lakes. And what that means is that a substantial portion of the population, greater than 30%, exists for walleyes in a keepable range, kind of in that 15, 19-inch range that so many anglers like to keep a meal of walleyes for. So if that's your fishing opener goals, now we've got a couple ideas for a plan. And we can also filter based on the kind of launches for the boats that we have. We can filter on accesses and amenities, ones that maybe have restrooms. And if we know it's going to be a big windy day or a blow day, we can focus on smaller bodies of water. Again, the filters tool is located all right here. Species and access are secondary filter tools, but if you want control of all of the features, simply click on all at the top of your app or at the top of the web map. So you see that it saved my recommendations for walleye and keeper potential. If at any point you get bogged down, you're not sure what's going on, you're kind of lost, just click a simple reset, clears all of your filter buttons. You don't have to go and unselect everything at the same time. You just hit reset and you can start anew. All right, so we know we've got a plan for walleyes, and maybe let's say our plan was for keeper walleyes. Boy, Winnie is as good a bet as any. There's so many fish in Winnie. It's a clear system. We know that. We've got some details that we can share on that later. But maybe we're interested in having a backup plan. Maybe a great 1-2 punch for us exists with crappies. And yeah, maybe again, this is the kind of deal where we're interested in a couple lakes that we can keep some fish from. So in the nearby area, adjacent to Winnie, we've got Cutfoot Sioux. We've got deer, caribou, moose, some of the lakes over here by Grand Rapids, a number of lakes throughout the state that exist with crappies in that keepable range. How do we know this? How do we see more about these data? Well, we can dig in a little bit tighter. So let's go ahead and do that. If you're interested in figuring out a lake-specific fisheries-based information survey, all you need to do is click on the lake of interest. So let's click on Winnie. All right, well, Winnie right away presents our filtered species of interest. We still have the crappie filter on. If that bothers us, we can go back, we can click off crappie, or we can hit reset, and we can go back to clicking on the lake. Okay, when we click on the lake, you see a couple of stats right off the top. Max depth, average clarity. We see right away there's special regulations called out. We also see there's fisheries information for Winnie. A lot of interesting info on seasonal movements, things that are happening during different times of the year. And also, interestingly, forage, giving you kind of a heads up as to what baits to use, match the hatch kind of information. But the fisheries data is very, very powerful. We've already used the filters to narrow down the kinds of lakes we want to fish. And now we get to do a deep dive. And let's do a deep dive on walleyes in Lake Winnie. So again, to get here, I'm going to back right up again, and I'm just going to click in the center of Lake Winnie. I'm going to see the top species come up, walleye. You can see that it is a below average abundance compared to other lakes in its class. but there are keeper potential. So again, let's dig into that a little more deeply. If you look right here, you see that the species information for the survey in September of 2023 gives us this nice bell-shaped curve. It says there's 203 fish that were surveyed. It gives you the number of fish surveyed on a per class basis. We see average length is 16 inches. That's a really great average length for walleyes. But again, compared to other lakes in its class, it's on the lower end of CPUE. What does CPUE mean? CPUE stands for catch per unit effort. So in Minnesota, that's based on the duration of the gill nets that are set out. Basically, they measure catch divided by the number of gill nets, the duration of the gill nets, the length of the gill nets. It's always recorded as effort. So the simplest thing for you guys to understand, high CPUE is a good thing. It means that they've caught a lot of fish with very little effort. So there's an abundant fishery there for walleye. If you have a low CPUE, you have to understand kind of what the level of comparison is. This is probably comparing it to Leech, Lake of the Woods. It's kind of on the lower end for that, but this gillnet recording is still fairly high compared to a lot of other lakes in the area. So something to keep in mind with CPUE, it's a relative measurement. Again, high is good, lower is technically not as good. Another thing to look at, we can scroll back through the years. So we can actually track year classes coming through the system. You can actually look and see how healthy some of the populations were in years past. And it's very interesting for Winnie. You can see those younger fish kind of working their way through year by year as each year they get just a little bit older. So very interesting information as you're working your way through. Also, for coming years, not as much recruitment as you could possibly see here. But again, so much changes in a year, it's best to rely on freshest information when you can. So that's a Lake Winnie deep dive. But Lake Winnie has so much more in this card, right? There is bass, there are crappie in Winnie. If you look at all the species, you can see there's even muskie information listed here. There's a whole bunch of info, as well as some stuff for things like perch, which can be a prey species. And also, interestingly, for Lake Winnie, there is special regulations. And for any lake you click on, if you want to know the current regulations, all you need to do is click on See More under regulations. And you can see that for Winnie, there's a sunfish daily limit of 5. And for walleye, all 18 to 23 must be immediately released. 1 over 23 is allowed in possession. The good news for you is you can still keep up to that 18-inch mark or a pinch below it. So that's useful if you're going to be fishing in this area and looking on opener for some fish to eat. But let's say you had this big problem and all you did was catch big walleyes for opener. Poor you. We feel really bad for you. And you need to go find some crappies to try and catch. And maybe we're going to look for keeper potential in crappies. Let's go ahead and just kind of poke around on some of these lakes. It's really fun to be able to click on some of these. And you see, oh, relatively low abundance. There are some keepers in here and some larger fish I see. Maybe we keep clicking. Oh, here we go. Moose is a high abundance of crappies. A lot of fish, including some larger fish, which is really nice to see. But in August of 2023, that's a pretty good crappie survey. You can see, relatively speaking, there's a high catch per unit effort, meaning that compared to other lakes in its class, crappies are doing pretty good in that lake. And maybe that's a decent lake that you're going to want to try and catch a few to keep from. Island is another one, but then again, when we look at Island, we see that there's relatively low catch per unit effort. So you can spend a lot of time just kind of poking around different lakes, trying to understand what species are going to be interesting. One thing to keep in mind, anytime you reposition the map or move, you need to re-click search this area to repopulate the map with pins. And again, if at any point this gets to be too much, information overload, we're not really even sure what we're doing because all we've been doing is clicking around and poking and prodding. Just go back to this filter, click reset, close everything out, and now no more pins are on your screen. You're ready to start another filter. So there you have it. That's kind of a 1-2 punch that for Minnesota fishing opener I've always relied on because let's be honest. There have been some fishing openers where there's chattering teeth in the boat. It's freezing cold. The walleyes are not cooperative. It's been a cold, rainy morning, and we just go back to the cabin and just ride it out and say maybe the sun will shine in the afternoon. Maybe we can catch a couple crappies and start doing that. So again, a 1-2 punch for walleyes and crappies is a good idea. Another good idea is to think about other species even. Bluegills are one of them. Perch is another one, especially in this area. If we can just kind of filter on perch, we can see a number of lakes have perch listed. We don't have keeper potential stats for it, but we do have high abundance. And if we look at maybe a high abundance lake, let's say like Cass, we can click on Cass specifically for perch again because we highlighted it. It has the filtered species listed. Abundance is through the roof, which is really interesting and fun to see. And you can see there's a lot of nicer fish in the system too, especially when you look at 804 fish that were surveyed, incredibly high catch per unit effort. Maybe headed to Cass just next door to Winnie would be a good 1-2 combination if you were looking to catch some perch as well. So just a couple options, a couple things to look at. Again, the two things to remember for you guys that are incredibly important. Finding new lakes is really a way to make you a better angler, and using our filters here listed is the best way to find new lakes. After you have gone through the filter and you're trying to figure out which lake you want to target and you need more detailed information, you need to click on the lake to get that fisheries data for you. Again, there is so much listed in this fisheries card, a ton of information, so as to make you kind of a regional expert without ever having stepped foot here. Again, we're trying to give you the confidence to go here. Even more information for you. If you've seen these little white dots all over the screen, maybe you wondered what those were. Well, they're actually fishing hotspots data. If you remember the paper maps that are still out there, there are fishing hotspots data listed for each of these lakes that have the white dots. All you have to do, click on one of the white dots, and you'll see something called area insights that pop up. That specific area is perch bar and it holds fish year round, gives you some suggestion on what to fish with, which time of year. It specifically calls out the individual species that are mentioned there and gives you the fisheries information report, kind of that longer form version. So if you've never been to Winnie, you've got no clue on where you would want to open, what part of the lake you'd want to drive to, you can pull this up, get some area insights, and really start breaking down portions of the lake that you'd want to visit if you've never been there before, and look specifically for spring information listed in those reports. Again, that's called fishing hotspots data. On those lakes with the white dots, as you zoom in, you'll also see all kinds of other information from sand listed, emergent vegetation, gravel and rocks. There's a whole bunch of info as you start digging deeper and deeper into the app. And as you probably noticed, when you click on the lake, you get some of the information related to accesses and amenities. All of these small little yellow little icons here indicate a public access. And you can click on those individual public accesses and get a lot of information on that access individually. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about navigating to these places. But I'm just trying to give you guys a quick run through of the map, help you understand what you're seeing on it. And again, focus heavily on finding new lakes. And once you found the new lakes, digging in deep to figure out the species detail data that are going to help make you a better angler and are going to help give you a more productive fishing opener when the time comes. So that's been my spiel on finding new lakes with the filters and using the fisheries data to your advantage. Jack, I think that's all for now. Is there anything we missed on those fronts that we want to hit, or do we want to dive into the next topic?
I think we can jump into, excuse me. I think we can jump into the app and I'll demo some of the different tools that folks might need. So let me get switched over here. All right. So as Joel said, I'm going to be demoing some of the app features here. I'm on an iPhone. If you have a phone and you're not watching us on the phone, meaning you're watching us on a computer, you can pull up the phone and follow along. I recommend that. It's a great way to learn, to just kind of do it as I'm doing it. As we mentioned earlier, iPhone only right now. So if you do have an Android, you're not going to have access to all of these features, but at some point down the road, you will. So the first thing I want to talk about is offline maps. So this is how you can use the onX Fish app when you don't have cell service. And, we're getting more and more cell service in more places every year, but there's still quite a few spots that don't have consistent service. I know somebody had emailed in, when they registered, had a question about offline maps because they go to the Boundary Waters every year. That's an area I wouldn't be sad if they never got cell service up in the Boundary Waters. I think that's part of the charm of the place. But let's dive in here. So along the bottom of my screen, that second icon from the left, it says offline maps. So when I tap on that, it's going to pull up a menu like this. And if you've used other onX apps, onX Hunt, Off-Road Backcountry, this is going to be a very familiar process for you. But for those that haven't, to start off, I'm just going to click this green button that says New Map. It's going to pull up a white box on my screen. Now, whatever is within that box is what is going to be saved for offline use. So I can still move it around. I'm just using one finger right now to get this moved around. I might want to just center Winnie in there. If we're fishing Winnie, we're not going anywhere else. I'm going to save a map there. But I could also move it around, and hey, we're going to include Bowstring in there and some of the other smaller lakes in case we might be hopping around to different spots. I'll have them covered with my map here. You have a couple of different options for the size of your map and the detail level. So medium will be chosen by default. That's going to give you a map about the size that you see on my screen here. It's 26.5 miles by almost 37 miles. Your mileage, it might be a little different. It's just device specific depending on the size and dimension of your phone screen or if you're on an iPad screen. So if your number's a little different, don't worry about it. The medium detail map is what I would use quite often. I would use that most of the time. You can also go to the high detail map, but you see it's much smaller. Like I'm not quite able to get all of Winnie in there. If I go to Leech, I would need to save a bunch of different maps in order to get the whole lake saved. If you're fishing a much smaller lake, no worries. You could just save that high detail map and have the coverage that you need. For bigger areas, for including multiple lakes, I use the medium. And the difference there, what it's talking about with detail is the imagery resolution. So a high detail map is going to have the crispest imagery resolution. Medium is a little bit lower. To be honest, in most cases, you're going to have a hard time noticing the difference, until you really zoom in. Then you'll notice the resolution is a little bit less with the medium. If I go to a low detail and I zoom out, now we can save a really, really big map. These are good. I view the low detail maps as kind of backups for we're going on vacation. We're going to go fish Winnie. We're going up for opener, but man, the wind's blowing too hard or the fish just aren't biting or you name it. We're going to have to call an audible, go somewhere else. If you have this low detail map, you can save a pretty good chunk of the state, whether you're in Minnesota or Wisconsin. But the imagery quality is going to be less. That might not matter to you. You're still going to be able to see all of the information as far as, boat launches, roads and trails, the public lands, all that information still going to be saved. It's just going to be less crisp of imagery for you. So I'm gonna go back to medium. I'm going to zoom back in. I'm going to make sure, all right, I got Winnie. I've got Bowstring. Got a couple other lakes in there. When I expand my menu, I can rename the map, and that's something I recommend doing from the outset. You might think, I'm just saving a map. Why do I need to name it? Well, once you start getting 10, 15, 20 maps saved, you're going to have a list of them in your menu, and you're not going to know what each of those maps is for. So what I would do is just name it after the primary lake that you're saving it for, or maybe it's, you're going on a vacation to Grand Rapids and you're saving a bunch of different, you're going to fish a bunch of different lakes. I might just name that my Grand Rapids map. I'm just going to name this one Winnie right now, probably because I don't know how to spell Winnipegashish. Hit save. And then now that's going to start downloading for me. And you'll see that countdown. Once the map has been saved and is ready for use, you will see a green circle with a check mark next to it, like we have there. And then I'm also going to have this green box on my map showing me where I have a map saved. So if you want to save multiple maps and cover a bigger area, you can absolutely do that just by creating kind of a grid. So if I wanted to save a bigger area, I can do that right here. I'm just going to name this, even though Winnie isn't in it, I'm just going to save Winnie 2 and save. So may or may not be something you're going to need to do. That gentleman, I think it was a gentleman who wrote in talking about the boundary waters. You might want to save a few of these, especially if you're going to be covering some terrain in there. You might want to save a couple of these maps to make sure you have coverage. And a couple notes on offline maps. Your phone's GPS doesn't work off the cell network. It works on the same system that like a handheld GPS uses. So it connects to those satellites. So when you are out in the field, when you're out on the lake, you don't have service or you have very little service, one of the main concerns is going to be your phone battery life. What I recommend doing is putting your phone into airplane mode. That's going to save your phone's battery better than just about anything else you can do. One of the biggest draws is if it's trying to pull that cell signal from a tower. So put your phone into airplane mode. That's going to extend your battery life. And all of the tools that we're going to talk about here, like your waypoints, being able to see your location, that is all still going to work when you're in airplane mode. So you don't have to worry about, oh man, I want to be able to mark waypoints. You don't need service to be able to do that. And then when you return to service, everything that you've done as far as marking waypoints, running tracks, etc., that will all be uploaded, and synced up once you take your phone out of airplane mode. So that's a quick run through of offline maps there. If you do have other questions, if I forgot anything, drop them in the Q&A box. But we're going to jump over and talk about waypoints here. So I'm just going to zoom in on Winnie. And now I'm going to go to my tools bar or my tools menu, which is again along the bottom of my screen. Second from the right, looks kind of like a Swiss Army knife. So when I tap on that, there's a few different tools available to you. We're not going to go into all of them, but we're going to focus on waypoints. So there's a couple different ways you can mark a waypoint on the map. When you are actually out fishing, what I would use most of the time is that mark my location button. That's along the bottom there. You might see it on my screen. That's going to place a waypoint where you are currently at. So whether it's where you've got your fish house placed, whether it's a hazard you see in the water you want to avoid, maybe you're really catching a lot of fish and you want to save that spot to be able to come back there later. Hitting mark my location will place a waypoint where you are currently located. I'm currently located in Missoula, Montana, where the onX office is headquartered. So I'm not going to hit mark my location because it's just not really going to work very great for our demonstration here. The other way to mark a waypoint, if you're like me and you want to mark a waypoint at a spot where you're not currently at, you can tap add waypoint. That's going to place a waypoint in the middle of your phone screen. That may or may not be where I want that waypoint to be. That's okay. I can still change it. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. And as I tap around the map, that waypoint is going to move to wherever I tap. So maybe this is, you're doing some kind of scouting beforehand and you're taking a look at some of the contours and the hot spots information, and you want to just plan out, hey, these are the spots we should look at going this weekend or look at going on opener. So I'm just going to pick a spot. Let's say that's where I want to be. I'm going to expand my menu here. Again, just like offline maps, but honestly more so. I think it's more important that you rename your waypoints and customize them. You're going to mark more waypoints than you're going to save offline maps. You know, down the road, people are going to have dozens, hundreds, over 1,000 waypoints, I would anticipate. If you don't give them a name, what do they mean, right? Say you fish an area, you mark a whole bunch of waypoints, but you leave them as X's with the generic name. A couple months from now, a year from now, well, what did I mark, right? Were we really catching a lot of fish there? Was there, a hazard in the water I was trying to mark? What were we marking there? So do your future self a favor by putting some information while it's fresh in your mind. I'm not saying you have to do it right away when you're catching fish. By all means, if the bite's hot, keep fishing. But that night, or when you're heading back to the ramp, put that information in there. Of course, if you're driving the boat, drive the boat, right? Don't be messing around with renaming your waypoints. But if you're a passenger, so I'm just gonna say opening day, because this is a spot I might want to go to. And then I'm going to change the icon. So by default, you're going to get that onX X logo. If you expand this, we have all kinds of different waypoint icons in here. Maybe it's a hazard that I want to avoid. Maybe this is where I want to go catch some walleye. I'm going to use the walleye icon. Then I recommend color coding your waypoints. So this is kind of I don't want to say like a pro move or a pro level, but it kind of is. Choose a system of colors for your waypoints that makes sense to you. And what I mean by that is there are all kinds of different systems for color coding your waypoints. You might do it by year. You say, all right, 2025, all of my waypoints are going to be green. 2026, I'm going to make them red. 2027, I'm going to make them blue. And then you're able to kind of see that change over time of, man, opening day 2025, the fish were here. 26, it was a little bit different. Why was that? Well, the weather conditions were totally different, or ice out was early or late, or, you name it. You can also color code by species. So some people will have their walleye waypoints all one color, and their largemouth waypoints another color, their crappie waypoints a third color. That's kind of what I do personally, because I kind of like to chase everything, so I can tell at a glance, those are walleye spots, those are crappie spots, those are northern spots. There's no real wrong way to do this besides not doing anything. So for walleye, I'm just going to make we'll go with red. And then if you want, you can add photos to your waypoints as well. That can be kind of fun to just add some fish photos on there to see, what you've been catching there. And then as the years go by, it kind of becomes a bit of a journal. Same thing with notes in there as well. If there's a spot you consistently fish, you might take a note every day you go. And you could just kind of have a running tally. May 31st, caught 10 walleye. June 15th, didn't catch anything, and just kind of have that information for your future self. As you build that out, it can become a pretty powerful data set once you get years down the road to see, man, this spot is always good really early, or when the water temp is, whatever, or this weather condition. And then other times it's really not good. And you kind of start building that base of knowledge. So I'm just going to hit save here. And now I've got that waypoint saved on my map. Once I've got a waypoint saved, if I want to, I can share that with somebody else as well. So say I have a really good buddy that's going to go up fishing on Winnie, and I just had a blast, and we caught our keeper fish and had a good fish fry. They're looking for the same thing. I can say, oh man, I got some waypoints. I'll put you right on the spot. So if I just tap on this waypoint, it's going to pull up this menu. That's where I could go in and edit it again if I wanted to. I can also tap share. And when you click share with a link, that will allow you to text message a waypoint to somebody. So I could just text them a link. They'll get a text message on their side that says Jack wants to share a waypoint with you. They can accept it, add it to their map, and then they can get to my spot there. Nice part is when I share a waypoint with somebody, I own it. Meaning, if I share a waypoint with Joel, he can't then share it with all of his buddies, right? He doesn't have the access to go in and share it again. And I can also revoke access if I want. If I send a buddy to a fishing spot and for whatever reason I don't want them to have that waypoint again, I can revoke access to it. So when you share a waypoint, you are the owner. You kind of control access to that waypoint. One other thing I want to kind of show here is navigation. So if I click on this public water access, I could certainly mark a waypoint on here, and sometimes I will do that just because when I zoom out on the map, as you zoom out far enough, those access icons disappear, but the waypoints stay. So you might want to put a waypoint on an access. You certainly don't have to. But if this is the one I want to go to, I'm going to tap on it. It tells me some more information about it. But now I can tap on driving directions. And now this will kick you out to either Apple Maps or Google Maps, whichever your preferred mapping service is of those two. And when I click on it, it's going to open up my Google Maps and it will run me turn-by-turn directions to that public water access. So pretty slick, especially if you're going to a new lake, which is kind of what we hope happens with people. We hope this app helps you find new spots to fish. But when you tap on that, it'll run you right to the access there. So pretty cool there. Last tool I want to talk about before I kick it over to Joel is the tracker. So the tracker allows you to lay down like a breadcrumb trail of anywhere you've traveled. So you can do this, we talked about it ice fishing. If you're following a plowed ice road out, you could run that track so that you know exactly where that road goes. Or if you're off on your own and you're getting out to your house or getting out to an area, you can run that tracker again. If you want to send it to somebody, especially if those ice conditions are a little bit iffy, then you've determined the areas that are not safe, where you don't want people to go, you can run the track, where you've determined is the safest route, and then send that to somebody so that they can stay away from, thin ice or pressure ridge or whatever. You can also use it in the boat, of course, when you're trolling around. Have that tracker run and see everywhere you went. Could be just kind of more information for you, more details. If you're marking, where you're catching fish and you notice on your tracker some sort of pattern, any information is good information, in my opinion there. So again, I'm not able to demo the tracker because I'm sitting in an office in Missoula, Montana. But once you save those tracks, they operate very similar to waypoints. You can share them with people. You can change the colors. You can give them names, all that good stuff there. With that, I think that's all I have for my portion. Joel, anything we missed there or anything we should go into again?
No, I think you did a really good job, especially covering the driving directions. That continues to be a really neat hack for so many different people. One thing I would mention is with the tracker feature on ice, you can use it with Apple CarPlay. So if you're driving out onto the lake and you still got an access that you can get out on here on late ice, you can track a safe route from shore out to a safe spot that you predetermined during the day. Maybe the weather kind of declines or deteriorates. You've got that breadcrumb trail tracker kind of log for you to follow back along your safe route of exit. So yeah, great job. Thanks for sharing all that information. And I'm going to dive back into the website of things here a little bit. So if we look back on the map and we want to understand just the last little bits of some things that we've got going on, again, as a recap, we've shared a lot of information with you. We've talked about finding new lakes, making you a better angler. We've talked about using this filter up here to narrow this information down. Again, this information exists, it's DNR data, but you cannot filter on numerous lakes at once. Rather, in the past, you always had to hunt and peck. This is an option and an opportunity to be able to see multiple lakes for multiple species and different characteristics of those species all at once. A very powerful tool. We talked about the fisheries information, being able to, on a species-specific basis, understand current variables that are going on in the system, look at past historical data, understand catch per unit effort. But we want to describe a few more map tools that are really, really valuable. Jack talked a lot about the waypoints, some of the driving direction information, offline maps. But when you're out there on the day of fishing and you're collecting waypoints or setting waypoints or returning to waypoints, like Jack was mentioning, it kind of brings up this idea of map interface and what we want the map to look like. And also, what are the things can we learn day of that might be interesting about the weather? So we're going to cover those two topics right now. The first being layers and the way we want this map to look. So you have the opportunity to customize the look and feel of the base maps quite a bit here. And there's power in this information. So let me back up a little bit and show you where that is. If you look on the lower right-hand side of either your app or the web screen, you can see where I'm mousing over. It looks like a stack of books. This is the layers button. If you single left click on the layers button or tap it on your app, it brings up control for all the layers. So there's a lot of information here. I'm going to show you one more time how to get there. I'm going to close that little window and I'm going to look down to this little stack of books or sandwich menu called layers. Single click on it or tap on it. And you see that I've got a couple topo opportunities, aerial photos, hybrid, a few base map options right at the outset. If you're the kind of angler that isn't wanting all of the land area to be as confusing, you don't want all that aerial photography on there, you just want simple, clean roads, a couple boundaries, some different features on the map, plus the contours and the lakes themselves, topo is a very clean option. I really like the hybrid option because it gives you some opportunity to look through those contours and get an understanding of shallow areas, try to understand exactly where some of these breaks, sandy edges really are. And of course, if the contours are distracting for you, again, these are publicly available contours. These are not high definition contours. If you want to just look at the aerial photography and bring less confusion to the situation overall, you can always just simply use the aerial function here too. But hybrid gives you a really nice mixture of both, I think. And if we're zooming out and panning to different areas, let's talk a little bit about recent satellite imagery. If you're an ice angler, you're very interested in this, whether you know it or not. So let's dive into an area like Upper Red Lake, where I can actually look at conditions on the ground between February 17 and March 3rd. This is a composite of over 2 weeks of aerial imagery to get you a ton of detail. You can see they've lost a lot of snow up there recently, but you can see all of the tracks and all of the areas that the current ice roads have plowed out to. If we back up and we get a little more snow on the image, you can see even more over different parts of the winter exactly where a lot of this went. If we go back to last winter where we had more snow and you can actually see a little more detail on the map, you can see areas that opened up during right around that Christmas time. And then they started to lay down better roads. And by the time you got to end of January last year, early Feb, you could really see a ton of detail on Upper Red Lake, exactly where people were fishing, where the resort roads were plowed out to. Again, if this is on your app and you're driving out on the lake, if you can stay on these roads, you know that that's fresh information that will get you safely on and off the ice to make sure that you didn't drift out here. If it's a low snow area, this is a safety tool as much as it is informational tool, helping you figure out where other anglers are, where roads are, and maybe where you don't want to be in the instance of other anglers. Maybe you want to fish areas in the winter that haven't been, haven't been attacked by many other houses or many other anglers. Again, here you can kind of see a network of roads on Winnie and where they have gone and where they haven't gone. So recent satellite imagery is controlled right here again. So I'm going to start from the basics again. We'll go back. If you go in the lower right-hand corner of your app or the lower right-hand corner of the web map, click on this little sandwich button. and select recent satellite imagery to be able to scroll through multiple dates of recent imagery and what the lake looks like in more current day condition. If you're summer angling, you may or may not want recent satellite imagery. There is more current data. It may be interesting in areas. It may be interesting in areas where the lake is lower to be able to see features that are showing under recent satellite imagery if there's low water conditions or high water conditions or extremely clear water where you can see through and start to see different sandbars and things poking through. So again, those are the controls for the base map and the difference between the hybrid high quality aerial information and the recent satellite information. Please chime in the chat box there if you have any questions related to these. But as we go down the list, one of the things that made onX famous, that helped hunters know where they stand, was public-private land boundaries. So if you kind of look around these areas, you see some of these areas called out where there is private land information. The further you zoom in, anywhere along shorelines, that stuff's listed there very tightly. If you have private land as a layer that's indicated and is on, you can click on a chunk of ground next to shore and find out exactly who owns that land, in this case, Chippewa National Forest. Let's say you're fishing some smaller lakes in the middle of nowhere and you're looking for creative access onto lakes that otherwise might be very difficult to get into. You can click on these parcels and you find out, hey, this is state in trust land. This is a way to legally access off of Birch Bark Road and get into the north side of this lake right here. So again, very powerful information. A lot of anglers feel that the value of this product is worth it just for that alone, because just like hunters, they're looking for creative ways to access new lakes and find new areas. A couple other ones that I love, especially during the summer, is the precip and radar. I love being able to zoom out at a kind of a very distant level, turn on the precip and see exactly where rain or snow is coming through. In this instance, rain turning to snow here eventually. Another one is motorized trails and snowmobile trails. It's just really key in areas with lots of lakes. If it's a heavy snow year, these purple snowmobile trails are the lifeblood of how to get to some of these backcountry lakes. And the motorized trails themselves show different areas where maybe the main roads aren't going to get you there in the summer. So again, a lot of details within this layers tool. Again, last time, this little stacked books icon, click on it and be able to select any of the layers of interest. Okay. Thanks for hanging with us all this time. We've covered a ton of information. I got one more key piece of information before I turn it back to Jack. We're going to talk about weather. And this could be the unsung hero in the app. This could be the one thing that for a lot of people tips it over the edge. If you're familiar with onX Hunt, you know that wherever you are placing that cursor, you're getting customized weather forecast information for that specific area. This isn't telling you what the weather's like in Minneapolis or Eau Claire. This is giving you a hybridized, styled weather forecast for this specific point that you're choosing. And if you look inside this weather card, there's a ton of information that anglers would love to know at any point. First off, wind readings. Second off, the barometer, always very important. Is it falling? This might be a great time to get out and do some fishing, given that the barometer is holding fairly steady and now is dropping in this area. You've got sunrise, sunset indicated. You also have a weekly forecast. You have an hourly forecast along with forecasted barometer, which is really wild because there's not many places that you can find any of that information listed. And again, this is interpolated for this specific area, right? You've got moon phases. If you're a musky angler, you've got the majors and minors listed for you. Again, there's not many apps or other pieces of information that have this data or these data in them, especially not with all of the other data that onX Fish has. That's the novel concept of what we're trying to bring to you as a one-stop shop. You also have moon phases. I can click on this button and get the full moon phase calendar. This lunar calendar is extremely handy for planning any trips a week or two or four in advance. And with all the information here, you'll never be feeling like you didn't have the scoop on exactly what the weather's going to be doing currently when you're at, hourly moving forward throughout different days as you're going to be extending your trip. There's just a ton of information here, and it's really easily found. Again, I'm a big fan of Weather Underground. This app beats that for me because it's fishing specific. I've got those major minors. I've got that barometer reading and barometer forecasting. I understand exactly for the area that I'm looking at what the weather's going to be like. And when I'm out in the water in the summer, I've got an understanding through the layers preset button as well as the weather at any time exactly what's going to be happening. And I can plan for everything from safety in storms to preparing for an evening walleye bite. When the barometer's dropping, it's been steady. It looks like a major feeding window is opening up. I can spend my time doing it. If you're a muskie angler and you're really focused on these lunar calendars and the majors minors, again, this function alone might be worth its weight in gold for you. So thank you for staying with us all this time. I know it's been a mouthful for us. We can only understand for you that it must have been an earful too. As you go through the map, a couple key tips, just a few more basic things. You can't break it. You're not gonna get to a spot like you will maybe on your laptop where you have to wave the white flag and bring it in somewhere. No, again, if you're in the filters and you're kind of lost, you're unsure what to do, just click reset and done, and it goes back to where it was. Clicking around and exploring is what's going to make you better at this app. Somebody asked, how do I save a lake, or how do I always revisit the same lakes? You can always, if you click on an individual lake, this little tab up here is this little ribbon. If you click on it, this makes it a favorite for you. So in your content, this will always show up as a favorite lake for you that you can come back to at any point. So again, click on the lake, click on this little tab, and then you've always got this listed in your saved lakes in your content. So there you have it. There is more, believe it or not, but I think we'll pause at this point for people to digest. We'll answer any last questions. Jack, I'll hand it back over to you.
Excellent. The first thing I'm going to do is let's give some stuff away.
Yes.
So I've posted the giveaway link in the chat there. I've also just turned the chat off because in previous classes that giveaway link can get lost as more people put chats in there. So click on that link. All we're doing is asking for your name, your email, and your shipping address so we can get those hats shipped out. We have heard some feedback from some people on some devices that if your phone isn't letting you like click on that link, you might have to copy and paste it into a browser or write it down and type it in manually. I've just heard that from some folks on other classes. They have sometimes a security feature won't let them click on links or something. So if you do have that issue, try that out. I'll shoot an email to the winners tomorrow morning, and then we'll get your hats shipped out to you, and you should have them next week sometime. One question, Joel, that I've seen is my lake doesn't have any information on it. You're not showing that there's any fish or anything. What's happening there? Why is it like that?
Great question. This is a bigger issue in Wisconsin, but it's pretty uncommon. These are only the very smallest lakes or areas where DNR fishery staff are either overwhelmed or typically don't sample. So we can only display for you where we have data. Where we do not have data, we're still going to help you get there faster. We're still going to show you the weather there. We're still going to allow you to save waypoints and do a bunch of different stuff on screen. We just can't provide you data that doesn't exist. So we do our best to constantly refresh this information. And rest assured, if your local DNR, if your state DNR ever does sample it, it's going to show up in the app.
Excellent. Well, customer support folks said, it looks like they answered all the questions in the Q&A there and didn't have any, super pressing ones to pass along to us. So we must have done a good job of answering everybody's questions in the presentation.
Absolutely. Great job, Jack.
Well, with that, just want to remind folks, if you do have something that comes up, I know I've always had that after I listen to a presentation of, oh, I should have asked that. You can always send us an email, again, help@onxmaps.com, whether it's something you'd like to see included in the app. We love feedback. That's how we can make this thing better. Or just, hey, how do I do this? Or Joel demonstrated something. Could you run it by me again? So don't be afraid to shoot us an email. Like I said, we answer every email within 24 business hours. So if you email tonight, you can expect a response from us tomorrow. And then I think that's it. I don't have anything else, any other housekeeping items. So want to thank everybody else again for joining us, and keep your fingers crossed. Maybe we'll have some better fishing weather coming soon. But this time of year, I don't ever really hold out hope. I just take what comes.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining, and tight lines. We look forward to using the app and offering feedback whenever you can. That's how we get better.
Awesome. Have a good night, everybody.